Why is $1,200 missing from our donor account? And why is it labeled as a gift to a charity I've never heard of? That was the first question I didn't ask out loud. My name is Everett Coleman. I'm 35 years old, and I make a living auditing nonprofits, financial forensics, donor fraud, and charitable scams. When someone reroutes relief funds meant for hurricane victims into a designer handbag collection, I'm the one who finds the trail. I've spent 10 years digging through misused donations, flagged grants, and missing funds. I know what it looks like when someone's hiding money. And lately, it looked a lot like my own wife. For the past 2 weeks, Marlo had been unusually curious, hovering by my home office, asking questions she'd never asked before. Where do you keep the transaction logs for the pledges? Did the software change this year? Mind if I take a look at that Q3 report? The first time I noticed something was off, she was standing by the printer at 6:30 in the morning, thumbing through a donation log from one of my private clients. I was just checking the gala details, she said. Didn't want you to forget the seat assignments. We weren't even invited to the gala. That happened again. I came downstairs after a shower and saw her holding my iPad, scrolling. She looked up with a soft smile, the kind you give when you've been caught somewhere you're not supposed to be. Just checking if that confirmation from the Carver Foundation came through, she said lightly. You know how I am about receipts. I knew exactly how she was about receipts. She tossed them in the trash before she even got home from the store. And the Carver confirmation had arrived days ago. I'd shown it to her, flagged it, and moved it into our archive folder. She handed the iPad back, but it was different. The screen was one menu deeper than I'd left it. Not our inbox, our shared cloud drive. Open to a folder marked Annual Giving 2024. No reason she should have been there. I didn't say anything. I just watched her place the tablet on the charger, slightly tilted, not where I left it. That was the moment everything clicked. Something had shifted. We lived in a modest colonial in Westchester County, a little above our means. We could afford on paper, barely, but only if we stayed disciplined. Marlo's philanthropic advisory, work paid irregularly. I picked up contracts with foundations when I could. And now, the numbers weren't adding up. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., I sat at my desk and opened our secure audit trail, the same system I'd helped design for donor fund tracing. I pulled up our household transaction log. That's when I found it. A $1,200 withdrawal from our savings account, processed under the name Bridgepoint Outreach Group, a fake-sounding nonprofit, vaguely humanitarian. No prior record of donations, no email confirmations. The money was gone. The kicker? The transaction had been processed through our home Wi-Fi at 3:17 a.m. 4 days ago, while I was sleeping. Marlo had been making transfers in the middle of the night. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because I've done this long enough to know that suspicion means nothing. Not in court, not in fraud claims, and not in marriage. You don't go in with assumptions. You go in with proof. I didn't sleep that night. The $1,200 transfer had opened a door in my brain I couldn't close. Bridgepoint Outreach Group. No listed website. No IRS 990 filings. I ran a background check through every nonprofit registry I had access to. Nothing. It wasn't a real charity. It was a shell, which meant someone had deliberately created it or used it to move money without a trace. And that someone had my home IP address. By morning, I wasn't even pretending to be calm. I made coffee, stared out the kitchen window, and watched Marlo breeze in wearing yoga pants and lip gloss like she hadn't been rerouting donor money in the dead of night. Did you sleep? She asked, casually opening the fridge. You look exhausted. I had some reports due for the Peterman audit, I replied. Stayed up late balancing the ledgers. She nodded, unfazed. But that's the thing about liars. They're not afraid of being watched. They're afraid of being caught. After she left for her morning spin class, I got to work. I created a new account, completely separate from our real savings. Labeled it Unity Impact Fund, gave it a plausible backstory, a fabricated donor trail, and a clean paper history. The kind of account that would look real to someone skimming without knowing what to look for. Then I linked it to a card, not a credit card. Those have more fraud protection than flexibility. I used a hybrid debit linked to a cloud-monitored honeypot. I even set the balance manually, $48,500. Not too high to seem fake. Not too low to seem irrelevant. Just enough to tempt someone into testing the limits. I placed the card inside my wallet, right behind my business Amex. Same pocket it always sat in. Same worn leather fold. I labeled the card in my fraud tracking system under Project Latchkey. I've caught scammers in Moldova and fake orphanage funds in Phoenix with less effort. But I'd never turned the system inward, never pointed it at someone who shared my bed. That night, Marlo made chicken marsala, lit a candle, played soft jazz from a speaker in the hallway, like we were staging a romantic Pinterest evening. She asked about my clients. I told her they were quiet this week. She asked if I wanted to go see her sister in Hudson Valley next weekend. I said I'd think about it. I smiled. I even kissed her goodnight. And then I waited. 3 days. Nothing. Then, on the 4th morning, I opened my tracking dashboard while brushing my teeth. The bait card was gone. I didn't panic. I didn't even blink. I simply closed the dashboard, rinsed my mouth, and walked downstairs to find Marlo brewing coffee like nothing had changed. She handed me a mug. "You working from home today?" "Yeah," I said, sipping slowly. "Just need a quiet day." She nodded. "I'm gonna hit the co-op. Maybe check out that art fair by the train station." "Sounds nice." She kissed my cheek and left. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed with the first alert. $240. Donation made to the Harbor Collective, Oakland, California. Merchant ID, unverified. IP origin, New York. Time, 10:17 a.m. Fake charity, unregistered group. Classic laundering move. Test the card, make sure it works. Small, unremarkable transaction. 10 minutes later, $600. Lightbridge Global Initiatives, Miami, Florida. Another shell, another fake. By noon, she'd run over $2,000 through a network of what looked like charitable entities, but weren't. I checked the back end. They all routed back to the same anonymous payment processor, masked by a trail of crypto-adjacent clearinghouses. This wasn't shopping. It wasn't impulse spending. This was structured, intentional, planned. She hadn't stolen money. She'd laundered it. Slowly, carefully, like someone who'd done it before. I sat there staring at the transaction logs as new entries rolled in. And I realized this wasn't about a one-time mistake. Marlo had a system, and I just stepped into it. By the end of the second day, over $11,000 had moved through the bait account. None of it made sense. The charities were scattered: California, Florida, Illinois. No real mission statements. No contact info. All of them had names just believable enough to pass a quick glance. Cedar Grove Relief, Global Mercy Access, Blue Horizon Families. But to someone like me, the pattern was loud. They were all transactional pass-throughs, funnels, set up to receive funds, bounce them, and erase the trail. And they all traced back to the same processor in Nevada. A processing service used by temporary foundations, sometimes for good, often for fraud. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. I want to understand the why. Because for all the financial tricks, for all the buried money, none of this told me who it was for. And then on Thursday afternoon, I got my answer. I was sitting in the car outside my office, reviewing the most recent transfer $2,800 to a group called Hearts United Project. But this one was different. This one had metadata. The processor hadn't scrubbed it completely, probably sloppy programming. Embedded in the merchant string was a reference email. j.larkin1974@gmail.com. My stomach flipped. I knew that email. James Larkin, Marlo's ex-fiancé. I'd heard the name exactly twice in 5 years. Once, when she told me they'd broken up after college. And once when she said he was a mess now, barely functioning. Some kind of opioid thing. Rehab. Homelessness. Estranged from his family. We never talked about him again. Until now. I ran the email through a contact trace. Billing addresses in Portland. Then Boise. Then Salt Lake. All linked to burner nonprofits registered under names like Mercy Cross, Horizon Family Support, Clean Slate Aid. All active in the last 2 years. All with exactly one consistent donor pattern. Occasional large cash drops from anonymous sources. Anonymous, until now. Marlo wasn't just giving away our money. She was funding him. And not just helping him get back on his feet. She was feeding a system. A network of false charities designed to move money in a way no one would notice. Like a quiet offshore rescue mission, except the person being rescued wasn't drowning. He was using her. Or maybe, just maybe, she was in on it. That night, I stared across the dinner table at the woman I thought I knew. She made salmon with roasted fennel, poured wine, lit candles again. It was all normal. Too normal. She asked how my week had been. I said fine. She mentioned how tired she was lately, how helping people, even when it's unofficial, just wears you down. She sat like a martyr, like someone doing holy work. I asked her what she meant by unofficial. She looked up, almost amused. You know, friends, people who've fallen through the cracks. Sometimes the system's too slow. Then she smiled, and I knew. She wasn't just laundering money behind my back. She believed she was doing good, and she was willing to lie to me, to steal from me, to save someone else. Only she hadn't saved anyone. She built a bridge out of my name and walked him across it. I didn't confront her that night. I wanted to. God, I wanted to flip the table, to ask her how long she'd been stealing from me, to ask if this was really about helping James, or if he was just the first one I managed to trace. But you don't make accusations in my line of work. You make files. So that's what I did. That weekend, while Marlo was at a wellness brunch in Hudson with her friend Taylor. At least, that's what she told me. I turned our home office into a surveillance rig. I duplicated the bait account, split the flow into two mirrored ledgers, one for my view, one to export as legal audit logs. Every transaction now recorded, time-stamped, geolocated, screen captured, auto-synced to a private backup server I hosted offshore. I even turned the house's Nest cameras into motion-sensitive recorders. I knew the exact drawer where she kept the bait card now. She'd moved it into her own wallet. I let her, because now, every time she touched it, I would know. Every swipe became a receipt. Every donation a breadcrumb. By Tuesday, she'd moved another $6,000, bringing the total to $19,800. One transfer even had a memo field. Personal relief fund, jail. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. She believed this was noble. Some self-righteous mission. A crusade for a man who once ghosted her after rehab. And somehow, I had become the bank behind it. That night, I checked our security feed. I watched her step into the office while I was out for a run. She opened my desk drawer, pulled out my backup hard drive, scrolled, hesitated, put it back. When I came home, she was on the couch watching a documentary about war correspondence. You ever feel like people have no idea what's really going on around them? She asked. I didn't answer. I just stared at her. Because that moment, right then, was when I knew. Marlo wasn't just lying to me. She didn't think she was lying. She thought she was the hero in her own story, that the rules didn't apply, that the cause justified the theft. And people like that, they're the most dangerous kind of frauds to her. They don't run when they're caught. They smile and say they were just trying to help. I waited until a Thursday. That morning, I made coffee, packed her lunch like I always did. Turkey sandwich, no mayo, just the way she liked it, and left it on the counter with a sticky note that said, "Love you." Then I went to work. Only I didn't. I drove to a co-working space in Yonkers, logged into my private server, and pulled the full ledger from the honeypot account. 37 transactions. Total, $27,650. All routed through fake charities connected to one man. All authorized by a woman who claimed to love me. I called her that afternoon. Dinner at home tonight? I asked. Sure, she said. Want me to grab anything on the way back? No, I said. We'll use what we have. I hung up and stared at the wall for a long time. That night, we sat down at the dinner table like any other Thursday. She'd made risotto, poured a glass of white wine for each of us. We talked about Taylor's new boyfriend, about how the roof might need checking before winter. I played along. And then, after the dishes were cleared and the wine bottle was almost empty, I asked, "Do you still talk to James?" She froze. The kind of freeze that doesn't last long, just enough to calibrate the lie. "No," she said. "Not in years." I nodded. I stood, walked to the office, and came back holding a manila folder. I dropped it on the table beside her wine glass. Then why is over $27,000 of our money being routed to nonprofits connected to his email address? She didn't open the folder. She just looked at me. And then she smiled. Not wide, not cruel, just measured, like she had expected this eventually. Everett, she said, folding her hands like a therapist about to break bad news. You always need to control everything. The money, the rules, even the giving. I said nothing. You think I don't see the way you audit our lives? Every dollar, every receipt, every dinner out reviewed like a compliance report. Still, I said nothing. So yes, she continued, I helped someone who had no one, who mattered to me long before you ever knew my name. And no, I didn't ask your permission. I reached for the folder, opened it, and spread the evidence. Transaction logs, charity registry metadata, screenshots of donation flows, flagged processor reports. I didn't need control, I said. I needed honesty. She looked down, and that, somehow, was worse than a scream, worse than denial. It meant she knew. She just didn't care. She wasn't sorry. She was only sorry she got caught. She didn't say another word that night. She left the folder on the table, walked upstairs, and closed the bedroom door. Not a slam, just a quiet click that sounded more final than it should have. I didn't follow. Instead, I sat in the office and started locking her out of everything. First, our joint accounts. Passwords changed. Two-factor authentication rerouted to my phone. Then, the savings account tied to the bait card, already nearly drained, flagged and frozen. Next, I called Wellspring Legal Advisors, a firm I occasionally consulted for on-fraud cases. I didn't give them her name yet, just asked about the legal protocols for financial misappropriation within marriage with digital evidence. The lawyer paused. Do you have consent on any of the transactions? No, I said. She used accounts I created for client simulation. They weren't even listed in our household budget. She didn't know they existed until she found them. Then what you have is unauthorized access, possibly fraud. Even if we're married, if the account wasn't jointly disclosed or explicitly shared, and you can prove she had no legal or verbal permission, yes, you have a case. I thanked him, hung up, saved the call log and transcript, backed up every single file to a secure drive I'd stored off-site, and then I waited. She didn't come downstairs that night, didn't text, didn't explain, but at 3:12 a.m., I got a push notification. Someone tried to access the Honeypot account using a VPN from a residential IP in Albany, her mother's house. The login failed. 3 more attempts came in the next hour, each one routed through a different masking service. She was phishing, looking for anything I hadn't locked down. In the morning, she was back at the kitchen counter. Toast, coffee, yoga mat by the door. You changed the banking logins, she said, like she was noting the weather. I didn't answer. You should know. I didn't do this to hurt you. I stayed silent. I did this because someone needed help, and you wouldn't have let me. That was when I realized something. She didn't feel guilty. She felt justified. And people who feel justified don't stop. They adapt. They evolve. They wait for new angles. I wasn't married to a person anymore. I was married to a system, one that had run out of places to hide. By Friday afternoon, I had the full chain of evidence archived and reviewed by legal counsel. Emails, transaction logs, IP traces, even a live capture of her failed login attempts. The attorney I spoke with, Laura Shevlin, a specialist in financial misconduct between spouses, looked through the documents and said one word I wasn't expecting. Clean, as in enough for prosecution, as in enough for a restraining order, asset freeze, and full legal claim. If you want to file, Everett, this isn't a gray area. I didn't reply. She leaned forward. I've seen this before. Spouses treating their partner's income like a trust fund. But the charitable laundering angle? That's rare. She paused, and dangerously clever. I left her office and sat in the car for a while. The silence felt strange, like the space between lightning and thunder. When I got home, the house was quiet. Marlo's car was gone. Her closet half empty. Her perfume still hanging in the air. She had left a note on the kitchen island. Not handwritten, printed, like a resignation letter. You'll never understand what it means to love someone who's broken. Under it, a flash drive. I plugged it into the laptop. It was a photo archive, old pictures of her and James. Rehab centers, group therapy sessions, a hospital bed. There was one picture of him holding a framed 10-year sobriety chip. The timestamp? 3 months ago, meaning everything she told me about saving him was a lie. He wasn't struggling. He was building something with my money. That night, I received a fraud alert from our credit monitoring service. Someone had attempted to use our joint credit line to withdraw $5,000 at an ATM in Newark, New Jersey. The request was flagged blocked, but the attempt had been made in person. She was on the move, and she was still trying. I called the bank, confirmed the block, then froze the card entirely. By now, every asset with my name was locked tighter than a federal vault. I didn't call her, didn't message, didn't ask where she was going, because if she wanted to disappear, I was done standing in the way. She had already taken enough, and what she hadn't stolen, she burned. 3 weeks later, I sat in a small hearing room at the Westchester County Courthouse. My attorney sat beside me. Across the room, Marlowe entered wearing a gray blazer she used to wear to donor meetings, hair pulled back like she was applying for a second chance. She didn't look at me. Didn't need to. The judge reviewed the files. The folder I'd assembled, the same one I dropped next to her wine glass weeks ago, was now part of the court record. Unauthorized access. Digital misappropriation. Financial misconduct within a domestic partnership. Legally, the term was simple: fraud. The judge froze our joint assets pending civil arbitration, authorized me to reclaim control over all personal accounts, issued a no-contact clause until further mediation. And just like that, the woman I married 5 years ago became a case number. Outside the courthouse, she stopped me. "Everett," she said quietly. "Wait." I didn't, but she stepped in front of me anyway. I didn't do it for him. Not just him. Her voice was soft, but steady. I did it because I knew you wouldn't. You always talked about helping people, but it was never real to you. It was numbers, ledgers, liabilities. I stared at her. "No," I said. "I help people who ask for help. You just picked someone who never had to." She swallowed hard. "I lost myself in it," she whispered. "In him. I thought maybe if I gave enough, it would matter." "It mattered," I said. "It mattered every time you opened an account that didn't belong to you. Every time you lied to my face. Every time you made me feel like I was the one who wasn't generous enough." She looked down. Then, quietly, "What happens now?" "You disappear," I said, and I walked away. That night, I deleted every folder with her name on it. Every shared login. Every reminder. I changed the locks. Shut down the bait account. Reopened the Langford donation channel and made a new contribution in full. No shells. No deception. Just the truth. Clean and quiet. And for the first time in months, I slept through the night.